Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hi everyone, and welcome to Room by Room, the Home Organization Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We're champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element, with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Gabriella Yastra, coming to you from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's begin.
Hello and welcome back to Room by Room, the Home Organization Science Insights podcast. Now, our environment is often a reflection of our inner state, and in tidying up our homes, we can often gain clarity in our thoughts and emotions. So this episode is all about decluttering our physical space for the benefit of our mental space. And joining us this week is the founder of India-based clutter management company, Mesmerize. Her name is Rachna Kacker, who has been trained in the renowned KonMari Method. And apart from bestowing her decluttering expertise onto her clients, she's also a holistic mentor who coaches women through creating a balanced lifestyle in order to reach their full potential. Hi, Rachna, how are you today?
I'm doing absolutely great, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us on our podcast. Now, before we begin, I'd love to know, in your line of work, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you've heard about decluttering?
So the first and the foremost thing I would call is the biggest misconception, and I feel not just India, it's across the world, is starting with a mindset where people feel that I need to get rid of everything to declutter. So what people generally do is they think of decluttering as something as minimalism, and then that makes them little afraid of starting their decluttering and organizing journey. So this is one of the biggest misconception. Second, for a lot of people talk about starting small. However, when we talk about the KonMari process, we take it as a journey. So it is not that you need to complete everything at one go in one day or a few days only, but take it as a journey. Don't give up in between, and until and unless you complete the entire process, don't stop it. That's again another misconception that people have. Now, this is something related to the topic that we're talking about, which is another misconception. So when I interact with a lot of people, they think that the decluttering process is only about physical things, right? So it's only about the physical possessions that they have in their home. Well, I have seen in a lot of cases, it is much, much more and very deep than that. So when you start with your physical possessions, you are actually creating an environment to also start decluttering mentally. That's the topic also of our podcast, where we say declutter your spaces to declutter your mind. So physical possessions are just the start, but you are actually creating a lot of things for your mental space also when you do the decluttering. And last but not the least is people think that they will be able to do it themselves, which often leaves them overwhelmed, not completing their decluttering journey. So that's another misconception, I feel.
That's certainly news to me, and a lot of these I am really keen to go further into detail. I mean, I always thought that it was necessary to do all of the decluttering at one go, and that often made it feel like a very overwhelming mountain to climb. And every time I couldn't reach the top, I would just spiral into like, why can't I do this? So I'd love to learn more for you. But before we begin, I'd love to get to know you better. So this is Have You Met Rachna Kacker? And my first question for you is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, in my spare time, uh, a little more than decluttering, I would say, which has been my passion. So I would want to go into the aesthetic part of it also. So in my spare time, I would love to decorate spaces, make them give a little more aesthetic look. Apart from this, I also love listening to podcasts, watching videos, and learning a little more about brain science, because that is something that interests me a lot. So that's what pretty much I do in my spare time. Apart from this, I love traveling, exploring new places. So, whenever I can, get an opportunity to get a few days, I would love to go on a trek or on a small, mini vacation and explore new places.
For sure. Brain science is so interesting. I feel like it's intertwined in every single thing that we do. So it's no doubt something that's forever going to encapsulate me. But you did mention that you enjoy the aesthetic part as well of decluttering and being able to decorate your home after doing that. So what would you say is your decor style?
Yeah, so I think I would go with the and minimalistic and a combination of traditional. So where you have limited stuff and you also bring in a touch of the traditional side.
Yeah, 100%. I love seeing traditional decor along with minimalism. I feel like I'm seeing that a little bit more now in modern times. And I have no, like, I don't begrudge the traditional clutter at all. In a lot of Asian homes, there's a lot of clutter and there's a place for it. But sometimes when you want to clear your mind, having that little bit of traditionalism here and there, along with your overall minimalism, it is a great place to be at while staying true to your roots. So that sounds great. Is there a statement piece or like a piece of decor that you really love?
Yes, so I would say, uh, you know, uh, any items that are emotional items, memory items. I always believe rather than just storing them in a wardrobe on a cupboard or somewhere we don't get to see it. If why don't you put to use? So I think I have something called as a cozy corner, and a lot of my memory items that give me are related to some memories of the past. I would always like to put those items at a place where every time I see them, I get a refresher of those happy memories, those happy times. So those could be the best decor items. Apart from that, candles are something which actually immediately, uplift the energy of your spaces. So scented candles or little aroma is something which probably I feel always adds to the space.
So you did mention earlier that you enjoy traveling as well during your spare time, apart from decorating and decluttering. So, where are some of the spots that you love to visit?
Okay, so I would say it's not one but two places. Number one is Switzerland. So I've been there and I have seen that people there, apart from developing the tourism and all, they're still, sticking to their roots, following the traditions. And the another one is in India, which is near the Himalayas. It's in Himachal Pradesh, a small village that I'd visited. Even there, I found the similar thing. So the cottages that they make, they put in a lot of love. Everything there is actually decorated, placed by them only, and that completely, gives a different vibe. So these are the two places, I still have great memories about.
Yeah, and it's really eye-opening to see how different their lives are to ours, where their homes are built from scratch. They're built with love. They're built with this is this thing that's just different from what ours is like, well, we renovate our homes, and that's done with love, yes, but we don't like construct them ourselves, and there's not as much of this sense of community, I feel like. So it's always really eye-opening, and they sound like wonderful trips. But are there any other spots on your bucket list that you're looking forward to going to?
Oh, yes, there are many. So, London is one such place I would love to visit. Apart from that, in India, in the Himalayas, I just want to spend, good 10, 15 days just cutting off myself, from the phones, laptops, all the digital distractions, and be completely with the nature. So these are two things as if now on my bucket list.
Yeah, I feel like being one with the nature is something that everyone should try once in their lifetimes. It might not be for you, but you're only going to know if you actually go and try, and you can see what it's all about. And you probably come out with a different perspective on digital items as well. So have you had any thoughts on where you would go for this nature trip?
Yes. So, in terms of the place, where would I go?
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's a small place which is called Spiti, which is again in Himachal Pradesh in India. So that is one place I would want to go. The temperature there is somewhere in minus 20s, and you don't get any network out there. And I want to be with the nature there for at least 10 to 15 days, because I've myself seen this. When you are cut off from all the digital distractions, you become more creative. So I feel, digitally also there is a lot of clutter that is causing distraction to us, which somewhere hampers our creativity. So when I go for this trip, I'm sure I'm going to come back with some new, breakthroughs for myself, some new innovative ideas. And I always, when I'm cut off from my phone, the networks and laptops, etc., I do a lot of journaling and writing, because you get a lot of ideas, and it does enhance your creativity when you're with the nature.
Oh, for sure. And you did also mention that you like listening to podcasts during your spare time. So are there any that you're listening to at the moment that you'd love to share with us?
Yes, so I'm not sure if you're aware of, there is an Indian podcast by the name of Beer Biceps. So it is by one of the person here called Ranveer Ilabadia. And one of his podcasts that I'm listening to is with this lady called Sister Shivani, who is a lot into meditation. So in this podcast, I still to complete it, but this podcast is all about meditation, the law of karma, and finding the purpose of your soul. And I am finding it really interesting.
Yeah. Do you think that these are things that you'd want to practice on your nature trip, perhaps?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, meditation is something I do on a regular basis. In fact, if you talk about even in our profession, when we start the decluttering process for any client, we start with a brief meditation, sitting in the place, greeting the place, and asking the place to cooperate us through the process and thank all the belongings that are there in this space. So it's a start with a brief meditation. Definitely, I would want to practice that at a deeper level. And yes, law of karma and all the other spiritual aspects is something which interests me a lot. And I would definitely want to explore this a little more at a later stage in my life.
Yeah, that sounds really invigorating, especially for your nature trip and being able to really get into it without the distractions of technology. Now, for our last question for this Have You Met section, do you have a role model either in your personal or professional life?
Yes, I would say. So, Marie Kondo, I would, say she is my role model, because the way she has made a very simple process as life changing, getting breakthroughs for people, that is something that inspires me a lot. And if you talk about outside India, decluttering, organizing is something pretty much common. A lot of people are aware of it. But in India, it is very, very new concept, very, very niche and upcoming thing. And people are not aware of it. So I take Marie as my role model, and I really want to, model and walk on her footsteps, like how she's created this as a very, very respectable and life changing thing for people. Similarly, I also want to, make this a very life changing aspect for people in India, and not just limiting it to decluttering for myself or my clients. I want people to take this up as career opportunity in India as well. So that's where probably, Marie is my role model.
Yeah, she's a fantastic role model to have. I've heard so many great things about her. And it's great that you have someone like that to look up to, especially on your journey to spearhead the decluttering in India as well. So I wish you all the best with that. Now we're moving on to the interview section. Thank you so much for sharing with us more about yourself. And our first question for you is, how would you define home organization?
Well, so let me make it very simple. I would say, if you are in a living space which enhances your efficiency, where you don't have to look for things. So I define it as a 60-second rule. So if you are not able to find out anything in 60 seconds, probably you need organization. So I would relate home organization to that. Any space that enhances your efficiency, that makes the place very, very comfortable and aesthetically pleasing, is a part of home organizing. And it can involve aspects like sorting, decluttering, or maintaining a system which is very easy for you, so that you are able to sustain it in a long run. So it doesn't remain a one-time thing where somebody goes and does a service for you. Sustainability, I feel, is the bottom line for home organization.
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it. And I'm now really having a bit of a reality check that I do need decluttering after all, because I often can't find things within 60 seconds. I'll think that something is in this particular spot, but it ends up being somewhere else. So I'm definitely going to learn so much from you in this episode. But are there any studies or research findings that support this idea that a tidy space leads to a clearer mind too?
Yeah, in fact, there are many, and I want to specially mention about two studies where they clearly talk about, how an unorganized space can get you into stress. So there is a study by University of California, and there is another one by the Indiana University. Both the studies talk about two common things. That is, if you are in a space that has too many items, too many things around you, it increases the stress hormone, which is cortisol, in your body, and it causes mental overwhelm. So it increases the stress. Now, one of the common factors for having a decluttered, clear mind is that your thoughts also need to be clear. So when you are overwhelmed, your thinking capacity always declines, comes down, right? So these are two studies which say that a clutter environment increases the stress hormone cortisol in your body. Apart from this, I would also want to mention about one more study, which was mentioned in the Journal of Environmental Psychology Study. Now, this study, when it was conducted, researchers found that people who were in tidy and organized room were able to actually choose healthier snacks. Now, I'm sure, audiences are thinking that how are the two interrelated? I mean, choosing a healthy snack. So that's basically about the decision making ability. So when you start decluttering, you hone up your decision making skills. And that is one of the, I would say, foundation for having a decluttered mind, having a clarity of mind. When you do not put in a lot of effort taking the decisions. So this studies says that your environmental orderliness also can influence your decision making skills.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I just imagine it's also something to do with being a bit overwhelmed by overstimulation as well, and being distracted by so many different things. And that's the reason we really need to declutter sometimes. So what are some of the most common challenges that people should be aware of when trying to declutter?
Well, first and foremost, I feel that emotional attachment to items is one big challenge. So people start their decluttering process, they want to get rid of, but because they do not have a proper system, they do not know where and how to start from, uh, or they are not able to identify that they are taking this item just as a normal stuff in their homes, but they have some kind of an emotional attachment to it. So emotional attachment is one big challenge which often people fail to identify. And thankfully, the KonMari process has a detailed structure and a system to it. Apart from that, as you rightly said, overwhelm is the another big challenge. People know they are full of clutter. People want to get rid of it, but they get really overwhelmed in this journey. Another important thing here is uh, the fear of being judged. So, a lot of times when people have the challenge, they find it difficult to do the process, do the decluttering on their own. They are hesitant to ask for a helping hand because somewhere they have a fear of being judged. I'm not sure about the other countries, but when I work with clients here in India, this is a very big fear. Where feel somebody, a stranger coming into my home, would judge me with the way I am living my life. Though we as professionals try to break this myth that they have in mind, telling them that it's okay to be cluttered. Even I was cluttered before I knew that there is a process to it, there is a system to it, right? But that acceptance, that fear of being judged, stops them from taking help or ask for a helping hand. Apart from that, decision fatigue is another big thing, big challenge. So they don't know the right way to take the decisions, and often in case of emotional items. I would want to add a few more. I mean, there's a huge list of challenges, I would say. Another important thing is where they have a family system where, you know, the their decision making is influenced by the other members of the family. So I always say, when you start your decluttering journey, do it for the things for which you are the owner, things that you own, where you will be able to take a decision. But a lot of times in a household, especially India, also has something called as a joint family system, right? In the joint family system, you have elderly people who've lived, almost 50, 60 years of their life. Now, for them, they have very strong emotional attachment to certain items. So even if the youngsters of the family, the people like you and me, when they are aware, they invite somebody who's a decluttering expert into their homes, want to get rid of things, often the decision is in influenced by these elder people in their home. So family dynamics, I would say, also is one big challenge that people play. And last but not the least is perfection. So when they start the process, they start by idealizing or visualizing something that they have seen on a Pinterest, a home that they've seen on a Pinterest, or a very fancy picture, which is not bad, which is good. But this process is not about perfection. It's a more intentional process, I would say. So these are the major challenges that people face when they start onto their decluttering and organizing journey.
Yeah, I have to say that I do experience a lot of emotional attachment to my items as well. But you did mention that the KonMari Method has a great system in place to help with that. So for those who are unaware, would you mind briefly explaining what the KonMari system is and how it helps with this particular facet of decluttering?
So the KonMari process is basically, I would say, based on a very, very beautiful concept, which is that choose those things which spark joy for you. Now imagine a space that has everything that makes you really happy. The kind of change, the kind of breakthrough it will bring into your life. Now, within the KonMari system, there is something which is very contrary to a lot of other systems, or if you talk about Indian context, where we've been since childhood taught that start location by location. Let's do this room today, the other room tomorrow, right? But the KonMari system says never start by location. So the KonMari process talks about going category wise. They've divided the entire stuff at home into 5 categories, where the first category is clothing, the second category is the books, the third category is papers, the fourth category is kimono or miscellaneous items. So anything that is not covered in the first 3 categories, or there is another last one, comes under the kimono category. So your kitchen items, your bathroom items, all these comes under the kimono category. And last is the emotional items. So the KonMari process says that when you go through this category-wise structure, following exactly the same sequence, starting with clothes, moving on to books, then papers, then miscellaneous items, and last, when you take up the emotional items, with every category, you're actually honing up your decision-making skills and you are mentally getting prepared. So by the time you come to the sentimental or the emotional items, which is the biggest challenge in letting go, you've actually honed up your decision-making skills. And I have seen so many people getting rid of those emotional items which are actually not contributing in their lives in any way.
And the thing about choosing things that spark joy for you is kind of the foundation of the KonMari method. But what about the things that don't necessarily spark joy for you, but do serve a big purpose in your life? What is the importance there? Are we allowed to keep them?
So apart from things that spark joy, we work on the concept of functionality. So anything that makes your life easier, better, and faster. So if you look at indirectly also anything that, let's say, a kitchen item, let's say some electronic appliances in your kitchen, which you use, but you ask me a question that, Rachna, how do I decide whether an electronic item is really sparking joy for me or not? But it is a functional item because it's making your life easy. Let's say if it's an electronic chopper, probably, it's easy, you're saving on your time. So in a long run, somewhere or the other, it is also giving you a little joy or happiness, because when you go to the kitchen, everything is at ease, making your life easy. So items that are contributing into your life in the present, keep those items that spark joy for you, or items which are functional, making your life easier, better, and faster. Keep those items. Everything else that you are keeping is actually not contributing in your life. And another important thing is, which I've seen with a lot of my clients, is why do they keep those unnecessary, unwanted things, even though they are not using it, or if they're not, even if it doesn't come under the category of sparking joy, functionality, or making your life easier, better, faster, is because they somewhere have a fear of future. What if I need this item in the future? And that's probably stopping them. So the KonMari process also give you one big learning apart from decision making, is that you learn to be resourceful. You learn to live your life even without the items you don't have currently. And a lot of us hold on to things with this fear of future only, thinking that I might need it in the future. That stops them from letting go of it.
Right. And sometimes this thing only really comes in handy 20 years in the future, which unfortunately is not going to help with the decluttering process. But you also did mention that family systems are a big challenge to overcome when trying to declutter. What advice do you have for overcoming that and facing that? Because a lot of family systems that have already put in place for households, the elder people tend to be protective of these systems. Is there a way to kind of propose a better system or more efficient system to the elders without disrespecting them?
So I would say that I wouldn't say it's a system. I would want to share a few tips that work well. So what happens is when you are doing the decluttering process, the first and foremost thing I would want to reiterate this: do it for things for which you are the owner. So let's say if you have an elder in your family, do not try to take decisions for them, because this is something which probably might hurt their emotions, their sentiments, and you never know. We think that taking a decision for them might help us might help us declutter our homes, but let them take the decision. When they take the decision, there are chances they will be able to let go of items. And let's say you've started your own journey, you've decided uh, you've already decided, okay, this is the stuff I'm going to keep aside and I have to let go. Now, a very important tip here is that do not take too much of time to remove the items that you've decided to let go. So at the earliest possible, because what happens is that when you have that item lying with you for a longer period of time, number one, there are chances you might change your own decision. And number two, when somebody else comes in your family or an elder person, they might try to influence your decision. So remove them at the earliest possible. And coming to the point where you don't have to disrespect them and still, make a system in your home, is that try and do this process when they are not around. So again, a disclaimer is, don't do it for their things, do it for your own things, but try and do it in their absence, so that you've removed, they would not even realize, they would not be able to influence your decision, and you will be able to complete the process. And when you do it for yourself, I have seen in multiple cases, multiple clients of mine. So it's called lead by example. So when you do it for yourself, you will automatically see elders in the home, children following this process.
Yeah, I have to vouch for that bit about removing it as quickly as possible and without them around, because I recently decluttered my childhood home, and I made the mistake of leaving the items I wanted to throw out or donate around, just lying around outside my room. And the next thing I knew, I entered the study room and I found that my mom kept like half of the stuff, and all of these items were chipped or dusty or essentially like non-functional. So definitely have to vouch for that step. I mean, it can be of purpose to my mom, but the reality is she doesn't need those things.
Exactly. Just to
Yeah.
add another point here. So same thing happened with me also. So when I decided to remove certain stuff, and then my mom came in and she said, okay, maybe I will use these at my place. So she took it with them. When I went back and checked with her, even though she took it thinking that she would use it, actually, she did not. So those were items she did not needed, but they seemed new, seemed a little expensive, and that's what she thought. Let me just keep it for myself.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that I also did put aside items that I felt like were stuff that she'd actually used and were genuinely looking brand new and barely used. And those items I found were like shouldn't be thrown away because it's just too good to waste. And I left that with her. But the items that I threw away, I genuinely thought no one should be having this anymore. But letting someone else in your family get the opportunity to take things out of your trash just invites just a lot of doing of double jobs, because they're gonna take half of the things out of the trash and then you're gonna have to put it out in the trash again. So definitely will vouch for that. And especially for those who have large amounts of clutter, you did mention that perfectionism is not the goal here and to tackle it one bit at a time, especially with the KonMari method. But what advice do you have for kind of facing that overwhelming sense of like I can't do this with decluttering?
So first of all, I would say is don't start alone. Get somebody along with you, accountable in your journey. So don't start the process alone. Get somebody with you to keep you accountable, to keep helping you, and keep getting you to complete your journey so that you don't give up in between. Second, I would say is uh, start small, but still go category wise. So, somebody who has got a lot of stuff, let's say that person starts with the clothing category. So, you can further in the clothing category do certain subdivisions. For example, you could divide them into smaller subcategories. You could start with let's say, all your tops. So start small, but follow the process. So follow the category wise system and don't get into a hurry of completing everything in a day or in a week's time. The KonMari process talks about doing the entire process in one go, but not a limited period of time. So if you have a lot of stuff, if you're somebody who has a lot of stuff, your KonMari journey could actually continue for 2, 3, or 4 months, or even beyond 6 months. That's okay. But decide an end time for yourself that I will not stop the process unless I complete all the 5 categories. So that's the key, that's the crux to get success. Another important point here is getting back to the decision paralysis thing. So do not take too much time thinking and deciding about your items. So when you have a consultant with you in your journey, they will guide you, but do not, or even if you're planning to do it with somebody as an accountability partner, maybe one of your family members guiding you through that, it's okay. But do not spend too much time on taking the decisions, because that probably might affect your decision making. And last but not the least, and we've also discussed this in the last question, that avoid keeping the discarded items for too long. So these are certain things I think if anybody who holds a lot of stuff also follows, they will definitely get success in their decluttering and organizing journey.
And once the home has been decluttered, what preventative measures should be implemented in order to maintain this clutter-free home?
So, number one, and the most important thing is mindful purchasing. So, a lot of us, especially these days, are shopping freak. Though I believe and I have myself seen people when they go through the KonMari journey, uh, there is a change in perspective. There is a change in the way they've been, living their life. So a lifestyle change, apart from the habit change, is definitely there. What I follow is a very beautiful thing which might help a lot of other people also. So, though after following the KonMari journey, the decluttering, or it becomes a habit. You would definitely want to, you start removing the things that are not contributing, making any positive contributions. However, before buying anything, before that impulsive buying, I just ask myself this question, that do I really need it right now? Or if I have gone with an intention to buy something, let's say if it's a cloth, I will make sure that I have at least removed 4 things before getting another one, a new one. And I have also decided a spot or a designated place for it before I actually buy that item. So a mindful purchasing is one thing. Second is, during the process, we set up systems where we do labeling, where we give a designated spot to everything. So to maintain the system is just, we understand it's a new process. It's completely change in your lifestyle. So you just have to put back the things in their designated place. And trust me, it helps a lot. Maybe you can decide on a time during a week or any periodical time slot which you would want to give, where you want to just put back everything to their designated places. For example, I'll give you, especially with the items, clothing category. So you need to do, send them for laundry, and once they come back, you need to keep them. So it's an ongoing process, right? What has worked for my clients and what generally works for everybody is that instead of, we all have a busy daily schedule. And if you want to keep everything at in their designated spaces, the way you want to fold them and keep them, it might become a little cumbersome, and you won't want to give up, right? You want to say, okay, I don't want to follow the process anymore, let it be. So decide on a time, maybe on a weekend, where you just take out 15-20 minutes, keeping back things to their specific allocated designated places. If you follow this, you will see that you are able to sustain and maintain the process in the long run. So most of the times, these are simple tips, tricks that generally work well. And I would say regularly purging and asking yourself what items I don't need at a period, and again giving a periodic time to it and removing those helps you.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I think specifically having a spot ready for the new item that you want to purchase makes it a lot more mindful, because I feel like a lot of people talk about mindful purchases now, that we're drifting away from impulsive purchasing and overconsumption, but don't really talk about what is necessary, what makes it a mindful purchase. And I think having a spot ready for it, planning out where you're going to house it in your home, is what really cements that mindfulness in your purchase. So that's a really, really good idea. And finding 4 things that you don't need, to remove them in order to purchase something new would help so much with with the snowballing of all the items that you're purchasing. And oftentimes there are so many items that are just lying around in our home that we don't even realize that we haven't worn or used in 5 years, and we're never going to use again. And we just mindlessly let them sit there because we don't have to think about it, but we really should. And it will really help with the snowballing as well. So my last question for you before we end of the interview section is, as a KonMari consultant, what is it about the KonMari method that addresses the relationship between decluttering and mental health?
So, talking specifically about the KonMari process, when it comes to decluttering and mental health, number one, I would say the spark joy concept. Because you are creating a space where you have those items which are sparking joy for you. It has a lot to do with creating an environment for success, having those items that make you happy. Second part, and the most important one, is about the emotional release. So, when you actually let go of those emotional items which are not contributing into your life, sometimes there are some negative emotions also attached to those items, right? And the moment you let go of those items and the negative emotions attached to them, there is also something in your mind which releases, some kind of emotion releases, and that also gives a lot of breakthrough to the two people, opening up more arenas. So I would say, maybe there is a barrier in your life, maybe there is something that is stopping you mentally, you feeling I will not be able to do that. So it takes care of your emotional well-being the moment you let go of those items. Maybe they have got some negative memories or negative emotions attached to it. And apart from that, uh, the mindfulness and intentionality part of it, where you actually go through each and every item, doing a joy check, checking whether that item sparks joy for you. That makes you more mindful, that makes you more intentional in your living, because somewhere in the back of your mind you ask yourself, you start asking yourself this question, that whether it's making any contribution in my life in the present or not. And trust me, majority of the mental well-being issues are related to only two things. Number one, either it's an attachment to the past, or number two, it's a fear of the future. So the moment you become intentional, the moment you start, questioning yourself and asking yourself that whether at this moment, at the present, is this, I think, contributing in my life? You start to get detached from the past and the future. You start living in the present moment. And that curtails a lot of emotions like overthinking, overwhelm, so many other things. That gets you into a very beautiful and healthy state of well-being emotionally and mentally.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you raised as well. That, you know, being letting go of these things is kind of like saying goodbye to them and having this one last moment of closure as well. So you're not necessarily just getting rid of things and not being able to get that closure. You are still receiving it. It's your one last goodbye, and being able to let go of the past and focus more on the present as well as the future will really circumvent a lot of that overthinking. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I feel like I learned so much more about the KonMari method method and a bit more about decluttering as well, and having so many of these really practical tips that I can use for my future, and I'm sure the audience will find really helpful as well. Now we're moving on to the practices and habits section, and my first question for you is, what is a practice that you like to do to maintain a clutter-free space at home?
Well, there is one thing that I actually missed mentioning, and which is a very crucial and very empowering part of the KonMari process, which is practicing gratitude. So, when you let go of some item, you actually thank it, you get into the mode of practicing gratitude. So, before letting go of any item, you thank it for the contribution it has brought into your life, what the purpose it had come, even if these are things that you have not used also, but probably it has come into your life to teach you something, right? So you thank it for that purpose and then let it go. So this is something that has taught me to start practicing gratitude and take learnings from every item. So even if I've shopped for an item just because it was in sale, and later I found that it's not a comfortable material, I'm not using it anymore, but because I have spent money, probably. So that obligation part of it, keeping things as an obligation, even though I'm not using. So I have started practicing gratitude. That's one very important thing. Second, I would want to mention here about the paper clutter. So here I keep the least amount of papers as possible, because when you start, keeping, I have heard a lot of people talking about, have a space or a drawer or a tray where you keep pending stuff, right? But I have seen this myself, that the moment you put, a couple of papers in a tray or a pending space, it will not take time for it to become a huge pile, right? So limit the paper clutter as much as possible. And this is something I personally practice as a habit. The moment the purpose is over, either I will digitalize it, maybe scan it, but I will try and keep the paper clutter as limited as possible, because without you realizing, it starts increasing like anything. So that is one thing. And then, even though KonMari journey is a process, and once you follow it, you will automatically see, but regularly purging, regularly downsizing is important. It becomes a part of your habit without you even realizing. But you need to practice it at a regular go, I would say.
Yeah, I really like the tip about practicing gratitude as well, and I feel like that's something I'm definitely going to adopt into my decluttering process myself. And I can just imagine me saying goodbye and thanking all of my items for serving me a purpose at some point in my life, and I just hear my partner going like, "Oh my god, she's nuts, she's lost it." But genuinely, I feel like that makes the process a lot better, in rather than just being like unhappily and just tossing things into the trash without really getting proper closure. But maybe this is also just dependent on what kind of person you are. And as for the paper things, I do have to admit that's something that happens all the time with me, with my mom, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of people. And I tend to also hold on to a lot of documents, being like, maybe in the future, in 10 years from now, I look back at this document and I go, wow, a lot has changed. But I've started doing this thing as well, where I just keep a couple of documents in a time capsule, and that only those will serve as that like thing that I can look back on, and the rest can be digitized. And I feel like that's something that maybe people who like to look back on the past on can adopt as well. But what are some of the challenges that people that you face, especially when practicing gratitude and digitizing everything? Are there any challenges that you feel like need to be addressed?
Yes, so I would want to talk about one thing in very specific, which is applicable to all categories. In fact, before even starting the process. So when I started my journey, I started it with a thought, thinking about what I need to declutter. And I was facing a lot of challenge. So I was decluttering and I was becoming cluttered again. And then what I did was I just went back and read Marie's book again. I read the entire consultant course material again. And there was one, line that actually changed the way I was doing my decluttering journey. And I always share it with my clients as well. And that was, rather than starting with a mindset of what I want to declutter, start with what I want to keep. Now, people ask me, it's one and the same thing. What is the difference? But trust me, it makes a huge difference. Because when you start by thinking what I want to declutter, you're actually starting on a negative note. But when you start with what I want to keep, things that really matter a lot for me, you will see a change in mindset. Your decluttering journey would actually become very, very easy. So do not start with a mindset of what I want to let go. Start with what I want to keep in my life. Things that are contributing, things that are making my life more meaningful.
Yeah, I imagine this is so helpful in weeding out the items that you might not necessarily want to get rid of, but have to because you just genuinely don't use them anymore. And taking this perspective really helps to get an idea of what you really need and what you really want in your life, and not just hanging on to things that you're not sure about. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and for giving us a bit more insight into your personal decluttering practice. Now we're moving on to the open mic, and this is your opportunity to talk about anything that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be related to the topic. So the floor is yours. Take it away.
Well, what I'm passionate about, I think helping people, coaching them, guiding them is something I am really passionate about. And I feel, if I can bring in a little change in people's life with the decluttering or any other tool, that is something, gives me a lot of adrenal rush. So, somebody who's stuck into a situation, helping them, asking them questions and guiding them to take the decisions is something I am really, really passionate about.
That's great to hear, and you sound like such a great coach, especially from what you've already taught me within this mere short 1 hour. I can't imagine how much knowledge and expertise you bestow onto your own clients, and you have such a warm personality as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, Rachna. If our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
So I am present on all the social media platforms, including LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. My company's name is Mesmerize India, and all the links I think you will be sharing in the comments so people can get an access to that.
Yep, we'll link those in the show notes. Thank you very much for joining us once again and for spending your time with us. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
You've been listening to Room by Room, produced by the Home Organization Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes like this from across 10 life management perspectives can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smart devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at ho.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Gabriella Yastra. Thanks for tuning in.